What's good, Phins fans? It is your boy Dillon, and I'm here for another video. This one I actually wanted to talk about some of these Dolphins narratives or, narratives that surround the Dolphins. Um, but before I get into it, and obviously, the biggest one that's going around is obviously that the Dolphins can't, beat any good teams, right? And then, of course, there's also, the narratives about how, the Dolphins will always collapse. It's just inevitable that the Dolphins collapse and, that they can't handle business in December and, all this other shit, right? So, um, those are the narratives really, mainly and primarily that I want to, kind of focus on and discuss today. And, kind of talking through them and seeing, are these things valid? Are they, real concerns? Blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. Or are they just, bullshit, right? So before I actually get into the specific narratives, though, I do want to say this, right? You know how in football and in this league, things can change super quick, right? In the middle of a season, things can change week by week because of things like injuries, right? Or, if a player gets suspended like Kareem Jackson, right? Or, all kinds of things, right? Off the field stuff or, what have you, right? Like there's all sorts of things that can come up, weather and, like if there's a major storm, right? Like the Dolphins have, been impacted by hurricanes before and, so, right? There are all kinds of things that can change. And then, year to year, right? The Giants and the Chargers were playoff teams last year, right? Now they're absolutely garbage, right? And then, of course, there are lots of teams that are coming up. They're on the rise. The Texans. Nobody thought the Texans were going to be the Texans. Nobody thought that C.J. Stroud, except for maybe diehard Texans fans. And maybe part of the reason for that, for some of them, though, is because maybe they're a little bit more informed on their team and maybe they could actually see the potential. Maybe some of those fans who said, you know what, C.J. Stroud and these Texans with Tank Dell and blah, 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 D'Amico Ryans, they're going to go far. And maybe they felt like that because they could see what was brewing in the building, right? And so for me, as a Dolphins fan, that's kind of where I'm at these days, right? Things have changed with the Miami Dolphins. And this is the first thing that I want to impress upon the audience here, is that things change. Right now, real quick, another comparison and side note here to tie this in. The Chiefs, for example, right? First of all, this year, they don't look like the same juggernaut Chiefs that we have seen the past few years. So that's a pretty major difference, particularly on offense. Now, to be fair, they do have a much better defense, though, than they have in the past, right? Now, on certain levels, you can say that the Chiefs, you can expect them to go far, not just because of their record and so on and so forth to this point in the season, but because of some of their previous history, right? Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Andy Reid, and those things are legitimate. However, there are because the world is nuanced, right? And the world is not just black and white and that's super simple. That can be true. Multiple things can be true at once. So that can be true, right? You can give them the benefit of the doubt because they have a proven track record, but it's also true that past performance in football in particular, and in sports in particular, but, specifically in this kind of field and in this context, things can change very, very quickly. And it's an absolute fact that the Chiefs are not anywhere close to the same offensive prowess that they have been in the past. But it's also true that their defense is much better than it has been in the past. So I say all that to say that the Dolphins are a very different organization than they have been in the past. So a lot of these assumptions that, like, the mainstream narratives and the media, right, the national media and a lot of fans, a lot of the things that fans are worried about, I get get it. I've been a Dolphins fan just like you guys for the past 20 plus years. And if you guys have watched my channel in the past, especially the prior to McDaniel coming to town and during the Flores area, you would know that I did not believe in the organization, not just the team or the players, but the coaches, the front office, and right from the top, Stephen Ross. I always gave Ross his credit for being good in the community. I always gave Ross his credit for, community and community service and for building the stadium and the training facility. He's always been great with that stuff. And I've always given him credit because he's the only owner that believes the billionaire owners should be the ones responsible for building the stadiums and not the taxpayers. That's amazing, and that's 100% right. You shouldn't be asking poor people, and relatively speaking, the taxpayers are poor compared to billionaires, and certainly a lot of them are actually poor. You don't ask the taxpayers to pay for a $500 million stadium when that's chump change, and frankly can be a write-off in a lot of ways to the fucking owners, not to mention the kind of revenue that they draw from that stadium. So he's gotten his credit, but I have been very critical of this organization. Now, the thing is, I believe that things are completely different within this organization from top to bottom. Now, look, Stephen Ross, the one thing I've griped him for is that his football decisions, but I've had to give him credit because I actually do believe in my heart of hearts, down deep, as a true blue, bleed aqua and orange Dolphins fan, that this organization from top to bottom is different. Now, Stephen Ross as a person hasn't actually changed, but he finally made, and to be fair, he did kind of luck into it a little bit because of how the whole process went during that time and the coaches, that we wanted and the decisions they made and so on and so forth, who was available, blah, blah, blah. But so they did kind of luck into it a little bit, but he did make the right decision finally and hired Mike McDaniel. And Mike McDaniel is the perfect coach for the NFL and the world today. He's the perfect coach for this team. He's the perfect coach for Tua. And they have this shit down throughout the entire building now on the right path. And that's the one thing above all else that gets me encouraged, right? Because I've never been the fan to blindly have faith in the team just simply because I'm a Dolphins fan. I'm the kind of fan that looks at the data, looks at the information, the facts, and then I make an honest and objective evaluation to the best of my ability based off of that. So I believe that the context and situation with which we operate now is very vastly and drastically different than anything we've seen prior to the Mike McDaniel era. Okay, now let's get to these narratives, these actual narratives about the Miami Dolphins. So the very first one is now, when I get into these narratives, keep everything that I've said up to this point in mind, right? This Dolphins team is very different than the past. It is not the same old Dolphins, okay? And we should fucking feel amazing about that, right? But the first narrative is that the Dolphins can't beat good teams. Okay, this narrative I find to be just absolutely, completely bullshit. And here's why. Now, to be fair, right, when this narrative first cropped up a few weeks ago, it was true that at that time, and going into most of those games, we hadn't yet beat a team with a winning record. Right? With a record above 500. But part of the reason why that narrative is so fucking stupid is because the Bills right now are 500. They're 6-6, and that was one of the good teams that the Dolphins lost to, right? The Chargers. Frankly, the Chargers and the Giants, as I mentioned, were both playoff teams last year. So coming into the season, nobody would have said those are just going to be pushover easy games, especially the Chargers. People came into the season thinking the Chargers were going to pick up from where they left off and they were going to be a playoff team. By the way, going into that game, because a lot of the people that love to defend the Dolphins can't beat anybody narrative, they love to bring up when the Dolphins fans want to be like, oh, well, the Broncos are a winning team now and the Bills are only 500. So how does that change your narrative? Of course, it doesn't for those people, right? But one of the things that they like to say is, well, going into that game, they didn't have a winning record. Okay, but last I checked, the first game of the season, nobody has a record at all. It's 0-0. Okay? So the Chargers, a team who we expected to be good and was a playoff team of last year, we went on the road, first game of the season, 0-0, both teams, and we won in a fucking shootout. Okay? So it's like, get the fuck out of here with this fucking narrative. It's stupid. Now, again, there are some validities to it, right? Because as the season has developed, for the most part, that is true. And we will have some other opportunities down the stretch. The Dallas Cowboys, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Bills again. The Cowboys and the Bills, I feel damn confident that we're going to get those wins down in Hard Rock Stadium. The only one I'm concerned about at this particular point in time is the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. But we'll get there when we get there. Okay? So it's just absurd. It really is, frankly, an absurd situation. I mean, the Broncos, again, they're above 500, and we smacked the shit out of them. Okay? Also, to that same point, listen, more teams probably should try beating the teams that they are supposed to beat, right? They want to sit here and talk about the Dolphins as if it's a negative that we beat the fucking teams that we're supposed to beat. Now, the same old Dolphins, if they were the same old Dolphins, would be doing shit like the Chiefs and the Bills and pretty much every other team in the NFL and losing to teams that they shouldn't lose to, right? The good teams. The Eagles, their only loss is to the fucking Jets. Like, are you kidding me right now? Okay? Like, now, when I say that, don't get me wrong. That Jets defense is fantastic. And has been for the majority of the season, except the couple past games, because they're starting to break now. That dam is starting to break and they're getting worn out both mentally and physically with their situation. But I mean, come on, bro. Like, it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. This narrative that the Dolphins can't beat anybody good. And furthermore, wanting to turn it into a negative that the Dolphins, only beat the bad teams. We're spanking the shit out of these bad teams, bro. The Jets, who are considered a bad team, but have a good defense, and we went on the road to play that game, we put up 34 fucking points. The only team that we should have beat, that we didn't blow out, was the Raiders. And look, a little rust coming off the bye week. They had that surge going on. They're playing tough for Antonio Pierce. They actually do have some talent on that team and a pretty decent defense. But, like, I mean, come on. What is this shit? It's absurd. It's completely absurd to me. Like, I think it's ridiculous. And I think Dolphins fans, from a Dolphins fan perspective, I think you should just completely ignore it. Right? And if you do get into it, say the shit that I've been saying, right? About the Chargers going into it week 1, how they were a playoff team last year, and it's 0-0 to start the season, right? All the shit that I've been saying, right? Just the Broncos now are above 500. The Bills are 500, right? Try maybe beating how about the Chiefs and the Bills beat the team? They lost to the Jags in London terribly. Now, the Jags are still a solid team, but I'm saying the Bill, like, it's just ridiculous to me. And it should, for Dolphins fan, we shouldn't look at that as a negative. Because if we really wanted to get in our own heads and say that these are the same old Dolphins, we would have lost to some of these bad teams. We would have stubbed our foot. Right now, to be fair, there's still 3 games coming up where we could stub our foot. We could stub our toe and end up dropping a game. But see, that's the thing is, right now with where this Dolphins organization is, I have a ton of confidence that that is not going to happen. Even if they play a sloppy game coming out of the bye to the Raiders at home and don't blow out a team, they still got the win. And that's what's motherfucking important. Because for the first time in the past 20 plus years, the Dolphins are in a fabulous place. And this will take me into some of the next narratives, right? Because right now the Dolphins are sitting at 8-3. I expect the next 3 games, they're going to get W's for sure against weaker opponents. We'll be 11-3 going into that Dallas game before we have our next opportunity to dispel the national narrative that we can't beat a good team, okay? Which I think we will, because I do think that we're going to beat Dallas when they come down to Miami. Okay, but let's go into this narrative about December. Now, frankly, that is true. This Dolphins team historically, and even with Tua, now part of that was the Brian Flores era, part of that now has been with Mike McDaniel. But the fact of the matter is that from a big picture perspective, it is an absolute fact that and we'll tie in the narrative that the Dolphins always collapse. Okay, but these ones I'm going to also dispel, at least from the perspective of that this is a different Dolphins team. And also the schedule lays out perfectly for the Dolphins as well. But to be honest and to be clear and to be objective, it is a fact that for the most part over the past 25 or so years, the Dolphins historically have been bad in December. That is true. They've also historically fallen apart. Anytime the Dolphins would make a run and, set themselves up potentially for the playoffs, they'd fall apart, especially later in the year. Those things are actually true, unfortunately, and we know that as Dolphins fans. But again, I remind you, this Dolphins team is very different than in years past. Now, of course, we could get to on the roster and all the talent, and that's true. This is the most talented roster, but the biggest thing for me is the culture and the coaching staff. And from the top down, I believe that they actually have the pieces everywhere that they need from top down. Again, Ross has not been perfect, but he finally got the right football decision. And so I think finally Ross has gotten it right. Excellent. The front office, right? When it comes to getting Vic Fangio in this year and getting Mike McDaniel in the building and trading for Jalen Ramsey, trading for Tyreek Hill, even though traditionally I'm not usually one of those guys that likes to make those big blockbuster moves because as a Dolphins fan in the past, they've always failed for us. But again, those are 2 examples of this regime and this organization doing, on the surface similar things, right? Making big blockbuster trades, but they did it and they made it work this time and they made smart decisions and they got the right players. You feel me? Instead of a Mike Wallace, they got Tyreek Hill. Instead of a Ndamukong Suh, they got Jalen Ramsey. You feel me? Right? And they made the right decisions. Those are just more examples. This organization is turning things around. And again, the schedule is perfect. So the first 3 games, there's going to be 5 games, right? There are going to be 5 games in December. And then there's 1 game of the regular season in January because that's the Bills game at the end of the season. And that's obviously just because they extended the year, added an 18th week and a 17th game, et cetera, et cetera. But so we have the Commanders, then the Titans at home, the Commanders in Washington, the Titans at home, the Jets at home, the Cowboys at home, then the Ravens in Baltimore, and then the Bills at home. That's 6 games, 4 of which are in Miami at home. The next 3 are against, cupcakes, easier teams. And we're already, 2.5, 3 game lead basically in the division, right? The Dolphins are in the best position they've ever been in. And this team is poised, bro. I'm telling you. The next 3 games, I expect them to win. Now, look, again, we're sitting here right on the edge, right? Now, it's totally possible that the Dolphins go in, they stub their toe, they lose to Washington or one of these next 3, and then, they kind of shoot a hole through my confidence right now and the things that I'm saying. But again, now, as fans, there's always going to be some level of belief or disbelief in your team, depending on who you are as a person, as a fan, where you stand, and so on and so forth, right? Again, I've never been the kind of fan to just simply because I'm a Dolphins fan and I have all this shit behind me and I'm wearing Dolphins apparel. I have a Dolphins ring and I have so many things Dolphins wallet, keychain, fucking, I have my goddamn dab rig is in Dolphins colors, right? I'm a Dolphins fan through and through and I bleed it. But I've never been just a blind fan and would say that we're going all the way no matter what. I always like to give a genuine, honest, and objective opinion and evaluation of my team. But again, I feel deep down that this team is different tangibly, fundamentally, and I believe that and I feel that way because what they have shown me from top to bottom. So I think that they're going to go out, and there's still a chance again that they could prove me wrong, but I think they're going to go out over the next 3 games. They're going to start December off hot, and I don't think we're just going to beat these next 3 teams. I think we're going to spank these next 3 teams and start December off hot, thereby going ahead and dispelling the narrative that we can't win in December and that we're going to have a collapse, right? And those things. We're going to go ahead and dispel those narratives. Then we're going to get to that fucking pre-Christmas game, because I think it's a day or two. I think it's the 24th is when we play Dallas, right? I think it's the 24th that we play Dallas. But anyway, they come down to motherfucking Miami, baby. They're coming to our home, okay? And I feel damn confident that we're going to get that dub. And that'll be the first, proof for this national media and for fans and for critics of this team that we can actually go out and beat, a good team, a quote-unquote good team, a playoff team this year, and a team going into it with a winning record. And we'll see. I'm still not quite there yet, if I'm being honest, but I do absolutely think that we can go into Baltimore and get that win. And I absolutely think we're going to beat the Bills at the end of the season down in Miami in Hard Rock, unless we're resting starters because we feel we've already locked up enough that we don't need to, worry about it. And if we're not playing for the number 1 seed still and, hoping to have that first round bye, then I think, if we're not playing for that, then I think there's a chance we can end up sitting starters being like, well, we've already locked up the division and, we've got a good enough seeding. We're not going to be able to get the first round bye, so we might as well rest our starters now, right? That's the only way I could see us potentially losing that game. But other than that, and here's the thing though, I think we're still going to be playing for seeding at the end of the season, even if it's not the number 1 seed, even if we're still just trying to edge out some of these other guys maybe for that 2nd seed to try and have as many home games as possible in the playoffs. But anyway, I just wanted to talk about, I'm going to go ahead and, wrap this up, now. I don't want to drone on for too much longer because I've really said my piece on it and there's really not much else to add. I just wanted to get into that a little bit because at the end of the day, and to just kind of recap, look, I mean, there is some validity, and it kind of depends on what the narrative is, but there is some validity to varying degrees to the narratives that we can't beat good teams and that the Dolphins always collapse and that we're not good at in December and, all this other bullshit, right? Or in cold weather games and stuff. Honestly, bro, Tua in this Dolphins team recently, since Mike McDaniel's been here, has had some good performance in cold weather games. So that's another one too that I don't even really fucking pay much mind to, or that we can't be physical. That's one more that real quick that I'll add into. I think the Dolphins team, this Dolphins team has proven that they can. The only problem with it is that Mike McDaniel's gone away from it, but I think he's learning from it. And specifically when it comes to like the short yardage situation and sticking with the run as far as an overall game plan throughout a game and as things change and he has to adjust. But I think he is growing, learning from that, taking his criticisms and so on and so forth. So I think the Dolphins are in a great place right now. Even though there is some validity to some of these narratives, I think the Dolphins are in perfect place to prove them all wrong. And I think that they will prove them all wrong because, again, and just for the last time, I think this Dolphins organization from top to bottom is different than what we have seen over the past 20 plus years. Now, if I'm wrong about this, not only will I admit I'm wrong, but unfortunately, if I happen to be wrong, I'm also going to be super fucking devastated, and it's going to crush my fucking hopes and dreams and break my heart and shit, because again, if you guys know me and watched my channel in the past, I got labeled for a long time as, the negative Dolphins fan or pessimist Dolphins fan, just simply because I was, putting the truth out there and being honest and for real in how I felt. And I didn't think that the Dolphins were going in the right direction prior to McDaniel getting here and the things that I've seen since. So I feel it's a very different team. I do not think this is the same old Dolphins. And I think we as Dolphins fans can hold our heads high and feel good about it and where we are. And fuck it, man. God forbid, knock on wood, whatever, if it does happen to collapse, let's, at least right now, let's enjoy it, because we've never been in a better place as Dolphins fans. Even in those winning seasons, even in 2016 and 2008 and these other years where we did make it to the playoffs, it never felt this good. So let's enjoy it, let's bask in it, and let's hold our heads high, because this Dolphins team is different, and they're going to take care of business, and they're going to end up 13-4 at the absolute worst. And they're definitely going to win a playoff game. That is my prediction as of right now, is that the Dolphins will go 13-4 at the absolute worst, which means that they'll lose only to Baltimore at the worst. But I think that they stand a damn good chance of winning out and going 14-3. And if the Chiefs lose one game and we win out, we get the number one motherfucking seed. Suck on that. Eat it, motherfuckers. Right? So I'm still pumped for that and think that that shit can happen and potentially will happen. Not that it will for sure, but potentially. But I do think the Dolphins 100% will win a playoff game at least. And if you watched my videos, I think the Dolphins are going to go all the way, bro. I do. Now, I could be wrong about that for sure. I'm not one of those fans, again, that's just going to be like, we're definitely going. But I think we can, and I have belief that we can. So on that note, I'm getting out of here. I will see y'all soon. Fins up. Oh, wait. Make sure you share my channel, share my videos, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave comments because I do like them. Just make sure you come correct, because, if you act stupid in my comments, if it's, some shit like racist or any of that kind of shit, or like that level of ignorant, I'll delete that shit. If it's just people being stupid, I'll ignore it. Otherwise, if it's decent, rational, reasonable, and, courteous comments, I usually respond and, interact with them one way or another, whether it's just hitting the little heart button or, actually leaving a comment in response. So make sure you do that. Hit the like button. I'm a rational, reasonable person, but I don't put up with bullshit. So make sure you're a respectful, decent human being, and we can have good conversations and back and forths and interactions and stuff like that. So I don't put up with the bullshit, but I'm a good, rational, reasonable, decent human being. So as long as you come correct and approach me in the same way, we good to go. All right, hit that like button, subscribe, share my channel and videos. I'm going to get out of here. Y'all have a wonderful day and a happy holidays. Fins up, baby. Let's keep this shit rolling all the way to the Super Bowl. All right, I'm out. I'll check y'all soon.
Miami wins it.